Hello everyone, Jonathan here bringing you another installment of At Home Shiatsu. I hope this video finds you safe and healthy in the comfort of your home. Thank you for watching. I hope you will enjoy this video. In this episode we will be covering the Bladder Meridian. The Bladder Meridian is the longest of all the meridians and it runs down the back side of the body. Let's take a closer look at the location in the body. The Bladder Meridian starts at Bladder 1, named Bright Eyes, located just inside the eye. It travels up over the forehead, just off of the midline, and then continues up over the top of the head. This is where it begins to descend down the back of the neck and into the upper back. This is where it splits into two sections. One which runs close to the spine in a place called the lamina groove, and the other section runs just outside of that on the edge of the erector spinae muscles of the back. All meridians have a directional flow, and the bladder meridian, being a yang meridian, flows down from the head to the feet. So it keeps descending all the way through the glutes and buttocks, following the edge of the sacrum. It then runs down the middle of the leg, splitting the hamstrings. Down into the calf, where you can see it starts to move to the outside of the calf and the outer side of the foot, ending finally in the pinky toe. One thing also to note about the bladder meridian and all meridians is that they are bilateral. That means that they run symmetrically on both sides of the body. As you can see in this diagram, the bladder meridian is both on the right and left side of the body. Let me send it over to Jess so she can give you a little bit more about the bladder meridian and its functions.
Hi, and welcome to the At Home Shiatsu episode number 2. Today we're going to cover techniques for the bladder meridian. I'm particularly excited about sharing this meridian with you and having Jonathan share the bodywork techniques with you because this particular approach to the body I find incredibly calming to the nervous system, which is something that we all need right now while we're at home doing our quarantines and protecting ourselves from COVID-19. So the bladder meridian in Chinese medicine is a yang meridian, which means that the qi flows downwards. So from the head down the back of the body. There are 2 bladder pathways along the spine, and then they converge into one pathway along the back of the leg. It's the masculine or the yang part of the water element. And so the water element is associated with the emotion of fear. So again, working on this meridian can help calm that fear that you're feeling, help downshift your nervous system out of fight or flight mode, out of that fear-based mode into a more parasympathetic nervous system activation. So a rest and digest mode, as we call it, which will unlock your body's inner resources to heal itself, to fight off any viruses or pathogens that might be trying to get their way into your body. The bladder meridian is also associated with a sense of drive. So being on the back body, the sense of being driven forward into your life, as is related to the physical function of the bladder, which will drive you to the bathroom when it's full. It will kind of impel you to go that way. So, so often in our Western society, we exist in a state of overdrive. And I think that's being highlighted more now than ever before, that we just have been constantly in go mode. And now that many of us stuck at home, we are being confronted with the requirement to kind of downshift, as it were. So addressing the bladder meridian through these at-home shiatsu techniques will help take you and your loved ones out of that overdrive mode and help you downshift into a more rest and digest mode. So without further ado, I'll have Jonathan demonstrate the techniques while I kind of explain to you what it is that he's doing. So to address the bladder meridian, because of its location on the back of the body, you'll want your partner to lie face down or prone on the ground. You want to snuggle up right next to their side body. So if you bring their arm out to a 90-degree position, that'll allow you to make gentle contact between your thigh and the side of your partner's body. And just begin with some gentle contact, resting the hand first and foremost, and then doing what we call brushing down the bladder meridian, kind of using your fingers on either side of the spine to just feel the tension patterns in your partner's back body. Now, to address the bladder 1 channel that is just outside the spine, place your mother hand or the holding hand in between the shoulder blades. And you'll notice that Jonathan's moving hand is on the opposite side of the spine. So very important never to put pressure directly on the spine. So keep your mother hand still while your messenger hand just repeats passes along that bladder 1 channel along the opposite side of the spine. Notice that Jonathan is rocking his body weight from his knees into his hands. One mistake that I see a lot of beginners make is they have their knees too close to their body, and then that creates some tension and pain in the low back. So if you're experiencing tension in the low back, then go ahead and scoot your knees farther away so you can rock your weight more forward and back. And now Jonathan is addressing the bladder 2 channel, which is on the outside of the erector muscles, so those big ropey muscles on either side of the spine. And he's working on the same side of the spine as himself now. So for that bladder 1 channel, he was on the other side of the spine, and for bladder 2, now he's on the same side of the spine, pressing his way along the outside of the bladder 2 channel. Now to transition down into bladder meridian in the legs, notice that he brings his mother hand to low back, and it has his moving hand work down just the center of the glutes and the hamstrings. Now this technique with the knee is an option, certainly not a requirement. It's a little more advanced. The knee can definitely give more pressure than your hand, but be sensitive to the amount of pressure that your partner A can handle and B wants. Now, don't get too close to the back of the knee joint. That's another endangerment site in the body. So never put pressure on the spine or directly on the back of the knee. Now, to continue the work in the bladder meridian in the lower part of the leg, you'll notice that he did a little quad stretch by picking up the ankle and pressing it into the glute, and is now bolstering the ankle with his lower, as it were, thigh that is lower on his partner's body. He's doing a little rocking action, so leaning over towards the right to pull traction. You'll notice that his partner's whole body is moving as he kind of leans his body weight into her calf. And then pressing down the outside of the foot, down and out the pinky toe, which is where the bladder meridian leaves the body. To transition to the second side, doing a little windshield wiper technique, which loosens up the low back, gets some mobility in the low back and the legs. Now, one thing to note about giving pressure while you're doing shiatsu is that it's not a pressing, it's a leaning in of the body weight. Harder to do when you're just using your thumbs, as in this technique, but notice that he changed his hand position. So he's bracing the thumb with the rest of his fingers in a fist. So he can just lean his body weight in and get a little more pressure. So you can see his torso and his abdomen moving as he's giving pressure. So if your wrists start to hurt as you're doing this, it's probably a telltale sign that you're pressing too much rather than just leaning. So if you practice leaning against a wall or leaning against a table, that will give you the sensation that you should feel in your body as you're leaning against your receiver's body giving shiatsu. And so because the bladder meridian moves down the body, now on the second side of the body, we're working our way up from the feet to the back to create a kind of continuous flow. But notice that he's still applying pressure from the top of the body downward. That is from superior to inferior. So he worked the calf from the knee down to the ankle, and then moved his way up to the thigh, but is working bladder meridian in the thigh from the glutes down to the knee. Again, being careful not to get too close to the back of that knee joint, as it's quite a sensitive area of the body. You could really do a lot of damage if you put pressure directly on that area. Another thing to note about working the bladder meridian in the calf is that you never want to apply pressure on the calf without something supporting the ankle. So in this case, it was his leg, his folded leg supporting the ankle. Otherwise, it puts too much pressure on the knee joint directly into the ground. So again, notice that he's rocking his body weight from his knees into his palms, working his way down the bladder meridian. So now he's working bladder 1 on the second side of the spine. Again, opposite, working across the spine without putting direct pressure on the spine itself. Your mother hand or hoe hand holding is in between the shoulder blades. As your moving hand, the Sha hand, the messenger hand, works the bladder 1 channel from the shoulders to the glutes. And after 3 or so passes, then you can back your body up to work the bladder 2 channel on the same side of the body as yourself, finding the outside of the erector muscle group, which is those big ropey muscles on either side of your spine. So find the outer edge of that and just push kind of at a diagonal down towards the earth and across your partner's body. Then you can move yourself overhead to work the points directly on either side of the spine. These are the associated points in Chinese medicine. That is, each of these points is associated with one of the 12 major meridians in the body. And just kind of transitioned into a catwalk down to the sacrum, pushing towards the feet on the sacrum, getting a little bit of length in that low back. And now just using some thumb pressure on the shoulder points, transitioning to palm pressure, and then back to working the associated points with thumbs. It's great for relaxing the entire body. You should feel the musculature of your partner's body releasing. At this point, they should be taking nice deep breaths and really feeling as if they're being pressed into the earth, becoming one with the earth. And notice also Jonathan's nice rhythmic application of pressure. There's a sinking in and releasing, sinking and releasing. It creates the sensation of a nice kind of tidal flow in your partner's body, being pressed down and then released, pressed down and release. Now for this particular part of the sequence, he's just working the medial aspect of the scapula, the shoulder blade. So just right along the shoulder blade, kind of creating some space in between the shoulder blade and the spine. And there's no mother messenger hand technique for this particular part. But one thing to note about that mother messenger hand technique is that your messenger hand, that is the hand that's moving and applying the pressure, should never go deeper than your mother hand. So your mother hand should always maintain a little bit of pressure. We say about 50% as your messenger hand transitions from 0 into a deeper level of pressure. And to finish up, you return to that same position which you started, with your partner's arm extended to 90 and you snuggled right up next. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of At Home Shiatsu, the Bladder Meridian. Have a great time working with these techniques. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either one of us. You can post a comment in the comment thread below this video. Feel free to contact me directly. My email address is jessica@integraltravel.com. And I would say, as you're starting to do some shiatsu at home, when in doubt, don't. So we always want to maintain safety, keep our partner's bodies safe, keep our bodies safe. So if anything feels uncomfortable in your body as a giver or in your partner's body as a receiver, always keep those lines of communication open. Don't be very cavalier, and reach out if you have any questions. Thanks so much. I hope you're staying safe and healthy during your time at home, and enjoy providing healing touch to your partners and loved ones.